Hello guys, welcome to Dr. Night Stare. I know you guys come here to relax and take a nap. So before we go, please hit like and subscribe. By the way, also tell me what time and where you guys listening from. Alright then. The saying goes that there's no such thing as a free lunch. It's a tired cliche, a capitalist mantra we utter without much thought. Usually, it refers to hidden costs or favors that demand repayment later. But I discovered, in the most terrifying way possible, that the price isn't always tallied in dollars. Sometimes, the currency of exchange is something you didn't even know you possessed. My name is Anya. I'm 28 years old, an architect, and until last Friday, my biggest worry was the overdue blueprints for a boutique hotel. It was a bleak, drizzly evening in New York City. That fine, piercing mist that transforms traffic into an inferno and everyone's mood into a grimy smudge. I'd just stumbled out of a catastrophic client meeting where I'd been verbally flayed over a shade of beige. I needed to escape, to recenter myself. I stopped at the Velvet Echo. It's one of those Greenwich Village spots with dim lighting, melancholic jazz drifting from hidden speakers, and waiters in tailored vests. Exorbitant? Absolutely. But I felt like I deserved a moment of luxury. The tables were all occupied or reserved, so I settled at the polished wooden counter. I ordered a Cabernet Sauvignon, my absolute favorite, and the evening special, duck confit with a cherry reduction. The bistro was bustling. The low hum of conversations was strangely soothing. Next to me at the counter was a man who appeared to be in his late 60s. His hair was silver at the temples, and he wore an impeccably tailored charcoal suit that probably cost more than my entire year's salary. He ate with deliberate, almost surgical precision, his gaze fixed solely on his plate. He didn't once check his phone. He simply ate and sipped an amber whiskey that caught the light of the overhead pendant. At one point, he must have sensed my glance. I confess I was admiring the exquisite cut of his suit. He offered a small, polite smile. "The duck confit is truly exceptional tonight," he commented. His voice was deep, smooth as aged bourbon. "I certainly hope so. I've had one of those days," I replied, returning the smile. "Indeed. Trying days demand commensurate rewards. Savor it, young lady." And that was it. He returned to his meal. No advances, no intrusive chatter. Just a cultured gentleman. I savored my duck. I drank 2 glasses of wine. The week's accumulated tension began to dissipate. For an hour, I felt affluent, secure, and utterly at peace. When I was finished, I signaled for the waiter. "The check, please." The waiter, a pale young man with pronounced dark circles and hands that subtly trembled. I'd noticed it when he poured my wine, but dismissed it, approached. He didn't bring the card machine. He didn't present the small leather folder with the bill. He glanced at the man in the suit beside me, then at me. There was something peculiar in his gaze. Pity? Fear? "Miss, your bill has already been settled," he murmured. I frowned. "What do you mean?" "The gentleman beside you extended the courtesy of covering your expense." I looked at the man. He was dabbing his lips with a linen napkin, then turned to me, his smile widening slightly this time. "You really didn't have to," I said, a blush of embarrassment mingling with gratitude. "It must have been quite expensive." "I insist," he said, his voice even. "It is rare to witness someone appreciate a solitary meal with such grace. Consider it a gift, a rebalancing of accounts." I should have declined. I should have slapped $300 on the counter and bolted. But my bank account was reaping. That was literally $300 I hadn't planned to spend. And he seemed so innocuous, a wealthy elder performing a kind deed. "Thank you so much," I said. "That is extraordinarily kind of you." "The pleasure is entirely mine," he replied. Then he added something peculiar. "Digestion is the most critical part. I trust you have a strong constitution." He rose, placed a $100 bill on the counter for the waiter, and walked out into the rain, unhurried, without an umbrella. I reached for my purse. The waiter remained standing before me. "Miss?" he whispered. "Yes?" He nervously scanned the room, ensuring the manager wasn't nearby. He left the receipt. The receipt? What for? House policy. When a tab is transferred, the original payer keeps the receipt, but he insisted you have his copy. The waiter then slid a piece of yellowed paper across the counter, face down. Don't read it here, the waiter's voice cracked. And please, don't ever return. He spun around and almost ran to serve another table. I found the whole situation utterly bizarre. Wealthy people are eccentric, I thought. I took the paper, stuffed it into my coat pocket, and left. The rain had intensified. I got into my old Hyundai Elantra, which groaned before starting in the cold. As the engine sputtered to life, I remembered the receipt. Curiosity nagged at me. I wanted to see how much he'd spent. Perhaps he'd indulged in some unbelievably rare wines. I flicked on the interior light. I unfolded the paper. The top of the receipt bore the name, the Velvet Echo, date, time, table 04. But the list of items, my eyes struggled to focus. The letters seemed to shimmer, or perhaps the ink was smudged. No, the ink was sharp. The words themselves were nonsensical. There was no duck confit. There was no Cabernet. The list read, 1. My Cabernet. The list read, R0.01x embezzlement, 2008-2001 Tiros 1x parental neglect, R0.001x 1x 1x Tiros 1x, sex 3, nex is x can x, zeros 3, mon x is 0 0 0.0 0 0 dollar 0.00 0 0.0 serves charge 10% 0 service charge 10% 0 0.00 transferred to beer 0.00 4x months pieros 0 strange 4x is 0. My signature wasn't there, but a fingerprint, dark and resembling dried blood, stained the line. A CH, a CH, a CH, a CH, a CH, a CA. I laughed. I laughed. A shrill, nervous sound, alone in the cold car. What kind of twisted prank is this? I scoffed. Is it performance art? Some weird protest? I crumpled the paper into a tight ball. What an idiotic stunt. The old man had printed a fake receipt to deliver some moral lecture. I tossed the paper onto the passenger floorboard. The car finally started. I drove home, but on the way, I started to feel it. First, a tightening in my chest. Not a heartburn, but a sharp, constricting ache, right over my sternum. I got home. I live on the 3rd floor. I climbed the stairs. The elevator was broken, as usual. On the 2nd flight, a sudden, alarming shortness of breath seized me. And then, a profound, crushing guilt. Tears welled in my eyes. There was no logical reason. I was just climbing stairs. But suddenly, an immense sorrow washed over me, a feeling of having utterly failed someone dependent on me. I saw the vivid image of a small child, face streaked with tears, standing alone at a school gate, waiting for a parent who never arrived. A little red backpack, rain, shame. But I don't have children. I've never been married. I entered my apartment, trembling. I went straight to the bathroom. The chest pain intensified, radiating down my left arm. I retched violently, expelling the duck confit. When I finally lifted my head and looked in the mirror, I screamed. My face, it wasn't quite my face. For a fleeting second, I saw the old man from the restaurant superimposed on my reflection. His tired eyes, the bitter lines etched around his mouth. I blinked, and I was myself again. Only, I looked older. And there were faint, purplish bruises on my arms that hadn't been there moments ago. My phone rang. It was my mother. Anya? Her voice was laced with worry. Hi, Mom. Honey, the police just called here. I froze. Police? Why? They said they found new evidence regarding a reckless driving incident from 2001. They said a witness finally recognized you. Mom, what are you talking about? In '01, I was 5 years old, I retorted. I know, I told them that. But they insisted. They said your name is officially on the report now. Anya, I'm terrified. Pulling on a grack. I raced back to the car. I snatched the crumpled paper from the floor. I smoothed it out. I read, Age reckless endangerment, 2001. Then, parental neglect. I remembered the strange guilt and the image of the abandoned child. Cardiac arrhythmia, the sudden chest pain and palpitations. My God, it wasn't a prank. It was a transaction. The old man hadn't paid for my dinner. He had purchased my innocence. He had swapped his ledger for mine. He had transferred the bill of his life to me. I had to return it. I had to cancel the purchase. I drove back to the Velvet Echo. It was 11:30 p.m. The restaurant was closing. I burst in, soaked, clutching the receipt like a weapon. The young waiter was sweeping the floor. When he saw me, his face went ashen. "I warned you not to come back," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "Where is he? Where is the man in the charcoal suit?" I demanded. "He's gone, miss. He's gone, miss. He's free now. Probably already on a private jet to the Seychelles, or experiencing the untroubled sleep of the truly innocent for the first time in decades." I grabbed the waiter by his collar. "What is this? What have you people done to me?" The manager appeared, a stout, bald man with a distinctly unfriendly face. "Release my employee," he said, his tone chillingly calm. "I want a refund," I shrieked, thrusting the receipt at his face. "I didn't pay for this." The manager picked up the paper from the floor. He read it, a look of disdain on his face. "You accepted the kindness. The transaction was concluded. There are witnesses. The system approved it." "What system? What the hell is this place?" I said, shaking uncontrollably. "It's commerce, my dear. The most ancient form of commerce. The Velvet Echo caters to a very specific clientele. Those who have accumulated immense moral debts and require immediate liquidity." He stepped closer to me. He smelled faintly of ozone and cheap cigars. Mr. Silas, the man in charcoal, had been carrying that debt for decades. His heart was failing. The authorities were closing in on his illicit dealings. He needed a proxy, someone untainted, with ample credit in the universe to assume the burden. "I didn't sign anything," I cried, tears streaming down my face. "You consumed the duck confit. You drank the wine. You offered your thank you. Verbally. Contract accepted. The flesh of the duck became your flesh. His debt became your debt." I collapsed to my knees. The pain in my chest was excruciating now. I tasted bile and a metallic tang of blood. "Am I going to die?" I choked out. "Eventually," the manager said, shrugging dismissively. "The cardiac condition is aggressive. I'd give it about 3 months. Imprisonment might arrive sooner if the legal bureaucracy is efficient." "There has to be a way," I begged, desperation clawing at my throat. "Please." "I'll pay. I have money." "Money is worthless here," the manager stated. "The only currency is debt." He turned to leave. "Wait," the waiter suddenly shouted. He looked from the manager to me, his young face etched with conflict. The manager stopped. He shot the waiter a venomous glare. "Don't get involved, boy. She has the right to know. It's in the house statutes." The manager sighed, clearly annoyed. "Fine, go ahead." The waiter looked at me. "The debt cannot be erased, darling. But it can be transferred." "How?" I whispered, a terrifying spike of black hope piercing through my despair. "You hold the tab. You are the account holder now. If you find someone willing to accept payment for their dinner, you can do exactly as he did." "I have to trick someone." "Not trick. Offer. The person must accept of their own free will. They must say thank you. And they must consume the entire meal." I looked around the empty restaurant. "But you're closing." "We reopen tomorrow at 7:30 p.m., the manager said. "If I were you, I'd secure a companion. And choose wisely. Someone healthy. Someone with a generous amount of credit. Because that bill there," he pointed to the paper still clutched in my hand, "is monumental. If you attempt to pass it to someone weak, they will perish at the table, and the debt will rebound to you with interest." I crawled out of there. I spent the night in the emergency room. The doctors ran tests. They found a significant irregularity in my heart rhythm. I needed urgent cardiac evaluation. My mother called again. The NYPD was heading to my apartment with an arrest warrant. My bank accounts were frozen for financial fraud investigation. I am writing this now, hunched in my car, in the parking lot of the Velvet Echo. It is 6,005 p.m. The chest pain is a constant, suffocating vice. I feel his memories invading my mind. I remember the sickening crunch when the bicycle hit the car back in W1. The cowardly, primal urge to press the accelerator and flee. The guilt is mine now. I feel every agonizing second of it. But I am not going to die for this. I am not a bad person. I was merely naive. I need to save myself. I have a date. I used a dating app. I matched with a guy named Leo, 24 years old, an aspiring architect. His profile reads passionate about giving back. Volunteers at animal shelters. Believes in honesty. He is perfect. He has credit. He is innocent. His soul must be pristine as freshly fallen snow. He will handle the load, at least long enough for me to flee the country. I see him arriving. He looks a little nervous, adjusting his shirt collar. He brought flowers. How sweet. I'm going to invite him in. I'm going to order the most lavish dish. I'm going to order the most lavish dish. I'm going to order the most expensive wine. I'm going to be utterly captivating. I'm going to make him feel utterly cherished. And at the end of the night, when the bill arrives, I'm going to smile. I'm going to gently place my hand over his. And I'm going to say, let me pay Leo. It's a gift. I hope he accepts. I hope he says, thank you. Because if he's too much of a gentleman and insists on splitting it, I'm dead. So please, if you're reading this, and someday, in a moment of unexpected grace, an impeccably dressed stranger offers to pay for your dinner at a fine restaurant, if he suggests it's a rebalancing of accounts, if he hands you a yellowed receipt, do not accept it. Scream, upset the table, splash wine in his face, pay your own bill, down to the last miserable penny. Because the indigestion of dining for free in this world, it lasts for eternity. Here he comes. Dinner time. Wish me luck. Or better yet, wish me an appetite. Sarah watched the incoming call flash on her screen, the sterile hum of the 911 center, a familiar constant drone. She picked up. 911, what's the address of your emergency? A breath, fast and wet, filled her ear. It sounded as though the caller's mouth was too full. Please, a man's voice rasped, urgency thick. You have to send someone now. They're changing. Sarah kept her tone level, neutral, the calm she'd learned to don like a uniform. Sir, I need your address first. He gave it, clean and confident, a high-rise apartment, floor and unit number, even the color of the building's awning, as if he'd rehearsed it. Sarah typed it in, starting a call card. Okay, she said. Tell me exactly what's happening. They're not people anymore, he insisted. They're still shaped like us, but the shapes are slipping. My husband's skin won't stay on his face. It keeps sagging like it forgot where to hold. A dragging thump sounded in the background, something heavy being pulled across a tiled floor. Sir, Sarah asked, how many people are in the apartment with you right now? 4, he said. Then, after a beat, 3.5. Sarah didn't react. She never did. Are you or anyone else injured? Yes, he answered immediately. I hurt them. I had to. If I don't, they finish turning. She flagged the call, beginning to dispatch units. Her hand didn't shake. It never did. Tell me where you are in the apartment. Living room, he said. They like the dark rooms, but I dragged them where I could see. Another sound, a thick, tearing noise, followed by a sharp inhale that turned into a gurgle. Sarah's jaw tightened. Sir, she said, I need you to put anything you're holding down. I can't, he replied, almost apologetic. If I let go, they crawl. They crawl. They crawl even without legs. Something slapped the floor. Wet, heavy. They don't bleed right, he continued, as if explaining a mechanical issue. It comes out dark and slow, like it's already old. My son Leo's chest opened when I pressed, not cut opened. His ribs peeled back like fingers. Sarah swallowed, keeping him talking. How old is your son? 8, he said. He doesn't have a mouth anymore, just a hole that keeps trying to scream. There was a high sound then, thin, reedy, child-sized. It cut off abruptly with a dull crack. Sarah felt her pulse throb in her ears, but her voice stayed even. Sir, help is on the way. I need you to move to a safe place. I am safe, he stated. They're not. She heard footsteps, bare feet, slipping, fast, panicked. "She's running," he said. "My daughter, Mia. She's not done yet. Her arms are too long, but she can still hide." A small voice whimpered in the background, a real one, human. "Daddy." The word dissolved into a choking noise. "Sir," Sarah said, louder now, "listen to me. Put the object down. Officers are minutes away." "I don't use objects," he snapped suddenly. "I use my hands. They're warmer. It keeps them calm." There was a sound Sarah knew she would never forget, fingers sinking into something that shouldn't give that way. A horrible, dense squelch. Then frantic movement, scratching, nails scraping wood. "She's strong," he panted. "They get strong when the bones soften." Sarah typed faster. Units were close. Too slow. Always too slow. "Sir," she said, "I need you to stop. You are hurting them." "No," he said, "I'm stopping them." The screaming peaked. High, shrill, tearing straight through Sarah's headset. It cut off mid-sound, replaced by ragged breathing that wasn't his. Then silence. His breathing came back, shaky now. "It's quiet," he whispered. "That's how I know it worked." Sarah closed her eyes for half a second. "Open them." Sarah closed her eyes for half a second. "Open them." "Sir," she said. "Step outside." "They look normal when they're still," he observed. "That's the trick. You have to catch them while they're moving." Sirens finally echoed faintly through the phone. "Oh," he said softly. "I hear them too." The line stayed open. Sarah heard him drop something. She heard a door creak. Then he said very quietly, "Why do my hands look wrong?" Officers burst onto the scene. Sarah heard shouting through the phone, commands, confusion. The call ended in chaos. Later, much later, Sarah would learn what they found inside that apartment. But right then, all she knew was that for 17 minutes, she believed every word he said, because he sounded like someone who thought he was saving his family. And that's the part that still keeps her awake. Alex found himself drawn to Clara, captivated by her, in a way that tightened his chest and stole his breath when she merely spoke his name. It was the kind of silent adoration that asked for nothing, living quietly within him. He envisioned innocent moments, walking home together after class, sharing earbuds, the brush of hands that would leave him sleepless. Normal, unblemished, safe. In the sprawling history lecture hall, Clara always chose a seat 2 rows ahead of Alex. He would watch the subtle shift of her shoulders when she laughed, the thoughtful chew on her pen as she pondered a question. He remembered vividly how she smelled, a mix of soap and paper with a faint sweetness, when she leaned in close. Everything felt utterly normal, until it wasn't. Clara raised her hand to answer a question, her voice faltering mid-sentence, her face blanched, not a ghostly white, but a sickly pallor. Her eyes unfocused for a beat, then she blinked, confused, and her hand rose instinctively to her nose. Blood erupted. It wasn't a mere trickle or a polite streak to dab with a tissue. It poured thick and dark, spilling over her fingers as if finally unleashed. It traced a path down her lip, pooled in the corner of her mouth, and dripped, slow and heavy, from her chin onto her desk. The soft, wet thud of each drop hitting the floor was what resonated most deeply in Alex's memory. Wrong. She gasped, choking, and more blood came. Warm, relentless, pulsing with the beat of her heart. A scream pierced the sudden silence. The professor shouted. Chairs scraped back as students recoiled in horror. Alex didn't. He leaned forward, his gaze locked. He observed the way the blood moved, how it contoured her face, clung to her skin before yielding to gravity. He noted the color transformation, bright crimson at first, then deepening as it thickened. He watched her hands tremble as she tried to stem the flow, how the blood coated her fingers, soaked into her sleeves, smeared across her desk like paint applied in a frenzy of panic. And something within him unlatched. He felt it before he could name it. A warmth spreading through his chest, a profound, grounding calm, as though he had at last tuned into the correct frequency. His heart slowed instead of racing. His breath steadied. The cacophony of the room faded until there was only Clara and the ceaseless flow. He wasn't afraid. He wasn't worried. He was, inexplicably, better. He knew, even then, that this profound, unsettling tranquility was something few would ever comprehend, let alone accept. He hadn't wished her harm. He hadn't wanted her to die. He simply wanted to observe, to understand, to commit to memory the way something so hidden could reveal such unvarnished honesty. Blood, he realized, never lied. Paramedics soon arrived, their efficient movements a blur amidst the chaos. Clara was swiftly taken away, leaving a trail of blood-stained paper towels and crimson footprints leading from the lecture hall like morbid breadcrumbs. The room quickly emptied, filled with a palpable hum of shock. Alex remained seated. His hands were shaking now, not with fear, but with a profound sense of deprivation, as if something vital had been torn from him too soon. His skin felt tight, stretched, wrong. When he closed his eyes, he saw it again. The precise way it moved, how it obeyed gravity, how it rendered everything else in the room utterly artificial. That was the first time he understood that a part of him existed that belonged nowhere else. Back in his small apartment bathroom, Alex locked the door and scrutinized his reflection in the mirror, searching for any telltale signs within himself. He pressed his fingers against his nose until it ached, until his eyes watered, until his skin almost broke. He needed to see it again. Needed to feel that calm settle back into place. When his nose finally bled, just a few drops, it wasn't enough. It was never enough after that. And so it began. Not with malice, not with cruelty, but with a silent crush, with concern, with something beautiful shattering before him and revealing his true nature. Perhaps some would call it an illness, a perversion. Yet Alex felt it was not a path he had chosen, but rather one he had been undeniably pulled towards. After that day, he learned the art of patience. He learned to observe Clara subtly, to offer care in ways that appeared appropriate. He walked her to the campus infirmary when it happened again. He held doors. He offered tissues before she even realized she needed them. People described him as kind, attentive. They commented on how lucky Clara was to have someone like him around when her nose began to bleed. They couldn't comprehend how intently he listened. Each time it occurred, it was distinct. Sometimes it was sudden, violent blood breaking free as if escaping confinement. Sometimes it was slower, a creeping dark line forming just beneath her nose before she even noticed. Those were his favored moments, not for their drama, but for their quiet intimacy. Just the two of them acknowledging it simultaneously. He worried about her, genuinely. He delved into research on epistaxis, dry air, stress, fragile capillaries. He memorized symptoms and causes, ensuring no one could ever accuse him of indifference. He paid attention to her breathing, the tint of her skin, the precise way she tilted her head back as she'd been taught. But no matter how much he learned, no explanation ever felt expansive enough, because none of them explained why his own blood didn't evoke the same profound response. He tried, of course, in private, cautiously, telling himself it was merely curiosity. He watched it bead, watched it smear, watched it drip into the sink. But it was wrong, flat, lifeless. It didn't move with intention. It didn't speak to him. Hers did. For 6 months, that was sufficient. Observing, waiting, being near her when it occurred naturally. 6 months of convincing himself that this was merely concern, warped by circumstance. 6 months of believing love could manifest in such a way and still remain love. But 6 months proved too long to dwell solely within a memory. The bleeds grew less frequent. Or perhaps he simply became more acutely aware of their absence. The calm no longer settled as easily. The world remained loud. His chest stayed tight. He found his gaze lingering on her mouth when she spoke, on the spot where the blood used to gather, imagining it there again. He told himself he simply missed her being well. He told himself he was afraid something was truly wrong. That's how it always begins, with good intentions that seem reasonable, if one avoids scrutinizing them too closely. The first time he tried to help recreate it, he was gentle, careful. He believed that if he was precise enough, calm enough, it would be just as before. Just enough. just a reminder, just a return to the beginning. He was gravely mistaken. He hadn't intended to hurt her. He hadn't meant for it to unfold as it did. He was attempting to transport her back to that singular moment where everything made sense, where their hearts felt synchronized, where the world quieted around them. But this time, the crimson rush was too swift, too overwhelming. It didn't possess the same controlled artistry, the same obedient flow he remembered. Clara's terror, he realized too late, had corrupted the rhythm. Later, they would speak of her death. But for Alex, Clara wasn't truly gone. She had simply transitioned, moved to a different plane, closer to the yearning he had always carried. He could still feel her afterward. Not a physical sensation in his hands, but a profound presence in his chest. A certainty, as if she had found her way to the very core of his being. While others wept and screamed and questioned why, Alex felt a quiet resolution. He was held. He was certain. She understood. She knew he loved her. And she knew he couldn't stop. Not because he desired to inflict pain, but because stopping would mean losing her all over again. Because she was the only one who had ever made him feel whole, and fragments of her still existed in the flow, in the way blood moves when it's honest. Other people came later. Not as replacements, never that. Merely as attempts to hear her more clearly. He didn't relish what followed. He endured it. He compared every drop, every movement, every moment of calm to the way it had felt with Clara, and none of them ever measured up. But sometimes, when it was close, when the world went quiet again, he swore he could feel her presence. And he knew she wanted him to continue. The chill that runs down my spine when certain memories resurface is a cruel, familiar torment. It's been a decade since that Thanksgiving break, since I was a bewildered 15-year-old, and the memory of what happened in the Montana wilderness had been a carefully buried secret, one I never wished to exhume. But some things refused to stay buried. It was my father, Mr. Davies, who drove my older brother Caleb, and me from our home in Oklahoma to my grandpa Silas's secluded cabin in central Montana. 10 days of escape from the daily grind, my father's predictable desk job, and Caleb's and my relentless school schedule. Grandpa Silas, a formidable veteran of the Vietnam War, had always been financially comfortable, his land a testament to his solitude and success. The highlight of any visit to Grandpa Silas's was always the hunt. My first taste of it was at 11, learning to aim an airsoft rifle at squirrels and chipmunks. Grandpa Silas took immense pride in his hunting grounds, instilling in us a deep respect for the land's bounty and the necessity of a swift, humane kill. Aim for the vitals, boys, he'd always say. Make it quick and painless. Our SUV crunched onto the gravel path leading to the cabin, where Grandpa Silas awaited us, flanked by his 2 bloodhounds, Willow, his gentle female, and Kodiak, the boisterous male. Their excited barks and slobbery greetings were a tradition, a warm welcome. Grandpa Silas helped us with our bags, ushering us into the guest room, where 3 king-size beds promised comfort after our long journey. This trip was special, though. This was our first time elk hunting. Once we were settled, we found Grandpa Silas in the living room. He'd laid out 2 hunting rifles, an assortment of gear, and 4 ghillie suits. There were whispers of exceptionally large bull elk roaming the territory, and Grandpa Silas had his heart set on mounting a magnificent set of antlers above his fireplace. I imagined the grand display, a silent sentinel overlooking the room. "All right, boys," Grandpa Silas announced. His voice, a gravelly rumble, softened with affection. "Your first elk hunt. We might just have fresh venison tonight. And," he added, a proud glint in his eye, "a trophy for me. Can't we just hunt at night without these ridiculous ghillie suits?" Caleb grumbled, his skepticism plain. Unlike the rest of us, Caleb detested the ghillie suits, calling them cumbersome and claiming they constantly snagged on branches, despite our own ease with them. "Absolutely not," my father interjected, arms crossed. "That violates fair chase. We're not risking trouble over a ghillie suit." Grandpa Silas chuckled, a warm sound. "Tell you what, Caleb, you don't have to wear one. I usually have you boys wear them for the camouflage, but your camo clothes should be fine. Just try to be quiet." Caleb, already clad in camouflage, visibly relaxed. My father, Grandpa Silas, and I donned our ghillie suits, appreciating their ability to blend us into the undergrowth, offering a buffer against any accidental noise. I had a fleeting thought that Caleb might be a liability without the extra cover, but I quickly dismissed it. Grandpa Silas loaded the rifles and the two bloodhounds into his old Jeep. We bumped along the off-road trails for about 45 minutes, finally reaching a clearing overlooking a vast meadow. Just as Grandpa Silas predicted, a small herd of elk grazed peacefully, mostly cows and their calves. We positioned ourselves under the cover of dense bushes, our rifles poised. The dogs crouched silently beside us, waiting for a bull to emerge. After what felt like an eternity, a majestic rack of antlers, like bone branches, materialized from the thicket, followed by the imposing body of a bull elk. It was colossal, the largest I had ever seen, though admittedly it was the only bull elk I'd ever laid eyes on. "There he is," Grandpa Silas whispered, raising his rifle. The dogs rumbled low in their throats, but my father's quick elbow silenced them. "Good. Who's taking the shot?" my father rasped. "Can I?" I whispered back, a surge of ambition compelling me. This was my first elk hunt. I wanted to make it count. My father and Grandpa Silas exchanged a look, a silent debate about my readiness. Then they nodded. An ear-to-ear grin split my face. "All right," Grandpa Silas said, handing me a hunting rifle. "Aim for the side. A clean lung or heart shot will put it down quickly." I nodded, took aim, and focused intently through the scope as the magnificent beast lowered its head to graze. I squeezed the trigger. The shot exploded like thunder, sending the remaining elk galloping away with frantic bleats. We emerged from the bushes, only to see the bull limping away into the dense woods. Willow and Kodiak immediately bounded after it, and we followed swiftly. We tracked the animal for what felt like 20 minutes before we found it, massive and still, on the forest floor. We cheered, celebrating our success, the dogs joining in, prancing and jumping with excitement. Grandpa Silas then told us to wait while he retrieved the Jeep to haul the carcass back. As we waited, I heard a rustle in the undergrowth below. Coyotes were common here, so I thought nothing of it. But what I saw next was far more unsettling. A figure, eerily human-like, yet completely naked, its skin a sickly pallor streaked with prominent varicose veins, appeared. It was severely emaciated, hunched over the elk carcass. I watched, bewildered, as the creature clasped a handful of the elk's hide in its gaunt fingers. "Hey, you okay?" I called out, concern mingling with confusion. The figure, with an alarming speed that defied its appearance, scurried into the thicket, vanishing like the coyote I'd initially mistaken it for. I jumped back with a start, colliding with my father, who caught me before I hit the ground. I looked up sheepishly as he raised a skeptical eyebrow. "You all right, son?" he asked. "Yeah, I'm all right," I replied, regaining my footing. He just dove backward into Dad. "What spooked you?" Caleb added, smirking. "It's nothing. Just a coyote," I lied, hoping to rationalize the unsettling sight. My father and Caleb laughed off my jumpiness, but the image of that thing wouldn't leave my mind. Soon, the familiar sputter of Grandpa Silas's Jeep echoed through the gully. We watched as he began the methodical process of quartering the elk, using the Jeep to support it, his knife and bone saw working deftly. He removed the antlers with the saw, stored the meat in coolers, and left the remaining carcass for the scavengers before driving back up to us. Eager for the feast, we piled back into the Jeep and headed for the cabin. We immediately carried the coolers to the backyard, where Grandpa Silas had already fired up his barbecue grill. My father put on some country music, and we devoured the juicy venison burgers Grandpa Silas was famous for. We were so engrossed in the moment that the setting sun caught us by surprise. As the sky deepened into twilight hues and the trees became masked in shadow, we moved inside, settling onto the couch, the hounds dozing at our feet. "Great shot today, Ethan. We've got delicious meat, and your granddad got those antlers he always wanted." My father smiled, watching Grandpa Silas proudly mount the antlers above the fireplace. "They're magnificent," Grandpa Silas exclaimed, stepping back to admire his new trophy. "Biggest rack I've seen on a bull, and it's finally mine." "We know, Pa," my father called out good-naturedly. You don't need to be a broken record until bedtime. You couldn't possibly understand what an achievement this is. For a hunter like me, a trophy like this, after all these years, it's something else, Grandpa Silas retorted, joining us on the couch for more conversation. Soon, we were all preparing for bed, anticipating a long day ahead. Just as I was settling under the covers, I heard the bloodhounds outside our door begin to growl. The growls escalated into a frantic symphony of aggressive barks, instantly waking my father. I hadn't even drifted off yet. We rushed out, finding Willow and Kodiak rigid at the end of the hallway, glaring into the living room. My father went ahead, motioning for me to stay behind him and the dogs. I heard his audible gasp as he stumbled back, so I quickly peered around him. In the faint light from the fireplace, to my horror, the same emaciated humanoid figure from earlier was staring through the large, sectioned window at the cabin's front entrance. Its eyes, glowing eerily, seemed to bore through the glass like twin incandescent bulbs. It placed a pallid, gaunt hand against the window, dragging its fingernails across the pane as if testing for a weak spot. Then, with heart-stopping speed, it sprinted off into the dense Montana wilderness. "Grandpa Silas!" I shrieked, my voice choked with terror, as footsteps thundered down the stairs. My grandfather burst into the room, rifle in hand. "What is all this commotion?" he bellowed. "It's 2030 in the morning. Can't a man get some sleep?" I was frozen, momentarily incoherent, trying to string together the terrifying images into a coherent description. Grandpa Silas raised a confused brow until my father, his voice low and hushed as if to avoid drawing the creature back, spoke for me. "We saw something outside. Nothing like any animal I've ever seen in these woods." Grandpa Silas paused, his expression visibly shifting to one of profound fear, as if he knew exactly what was coming. "What did it look like?" he finally asked after a long, eerie silence, gripping his rifle until his knuckles were white. "A man," I finally blurted out, but he was naked, and his eyes had this weird glow. "Stay inside," he rasped, cutting me off. "Go to your room, take the dogs inside, he's back." I had no time to question him. My father pushed me and the bloodhounds into the guest room, slamming the door shut behind us. Caleb was awake, staring at us with a bewildered expression, but we said nothing. My father and I just looked at each other in silence as the dogs whined and pawed at the closed door, which we were now barricading with our bodies. Silence stretched for a tense 10 minutes, then a series of loud gunshots shattered the air, followed by Grandpa Silas's bellow. "Stay in here. Don't move," my father whispered to Caleb. "Caleb, something's wrong. I don't know what it is, but make sure you keep your brother safe." My brother nodded as I dove into his arms for protection. My father slipped out the door in a flash, slamming it behind him as the bloodhounds erupted into a furious barking storm. More gunshots followed, then silence. It felt like 15 minutes passed before my father came rushing back into the room. I noticed several fresh scratches across his arm, which he clutched, gritting his teeth against the pain. Get your things. Pack everything. We're leaving. We can't stay here." My father's voice was urgent as he began stuffing his backpack. Not wanting to know why, Caleb and I did the same, scrambling to pack. We all hurried out of the room towards the back door, the dogs hot on our heels. We crept silently around the side of the cabin. Caleb and I worked to keep the dogs quiet, knowing their barking might attract whatever was out there. As we crouched toward our SUV, we saw a chilling trail of blood leading into the trees, originating from a dark pool where Grandpa Silas's rifle lay discarded. We fought back gasps and tears as we scrambled into my dad's SUV, tossing our bags into the trunk. I dove into the back with the bloodhounds as Caleb took shotgun, and my dad frantically sprang into the driver's seat. A flurry of slamming doors, the distinct click of the key fob, and my dad floored the gas. As we pulled out onto the road, Caleb screamed in horror. The same creature, now stained crimson, emerged from the bushes, making a terrifying beeline for our car. My dad didn't hesitate, speeding off into the night, leaving the cabin and whatever haunted it behind. We spent the remainder of our vacation at a pet-friendly hotel, mourning what we all knew was Grandpa Silas's death. Once back in Oklahoma, after the 3 remaining days of Thanksgiving break, my dad filed a missing persons report with Grandpa Silas's local sheriff's department. I won't detail the specifics, but the official conclusion was an animal attack. His body was never recovered. But my father and I knew the truth. We saw what we saw, and we knew the real culprit behind his disappearance. A decade later, my father and I still occasionally talk about that night. Caleb and I have unfortunately drifted apart over the years, but my dad and I share an unshakable bond forged in terror. We both agree we will never set foot in Montana again. What we witnessed made one thing clear: that state is no longer safe for us. So, I'll stick to game hunting in the familiar safety of Oklahoma for my own well-being and to ensure I never experience anything like that ever again. Sarah's fingers flew across the keyboard, a silent frenzy of clicks filling the air around her. Her cheeks burned with a feverish flush, an insistent drum of urgency pounding in her chest. A flicker in her peripheral vision caught her attention. Mr. Henderson, her manager, was emerging from his glass-walled office, his gaze already fixed on her cubicle. Sarah's fingers accelerated, a blur of motion. "Is it finalized, Sarah? This report needs to go out to regional ASAP." Mr. Henderson's voice cut through the air. "I know," she murmured, her eyes locked on the glowing screen, the mouse a frantic extension of her will. "Just 5 more minutes," she promised. He sighed, a sound heavy with impatience, and retreated to his lair. A quick glance at her inbox icon confirmed the grim truth. 62 unread messages had accumulated since morning. Her lower back screamed in protest, but proper posture was a luxury she couldn't afford. Only the completion of this report mattered. The progress bar crept towards completion. Ping. Ping. Her monitor flashed with a message from Mr. Henderson, forcing her to minimize her work to reply. She needed more time. Tang. Ping. Another email landed with an unwelcome chime. "Screw it," she muttered, hitting send. It wasn't perfect, but it would have to be. Sarah pushed back from her desk, indulging in a full-body stretch that elicited a symphony of pops and cracks. A sigh of sheer relief escaped her lips. Her manager, however, was already shuffling back. "Sarah, I'm terribly sorry, but there's a last-minute change," he began, his voice laced with feigned regret. "I've just been informed I'm presenting to the board this afternoon. Can you whip up a new presentation?" He apologized again, rattling off the new requirements. 30 minutes off the new requirements. 30 minutes. 30 minutes to craft an executive brief. No time for the restroom, no time for a quick coffee. Sarah slumped back into her chair. Another break denied. Ping. Another email. She reopened the presentation software. Before she could even click the first slide, a low guttural growl echoed through the cavernous trading floor. No one flinched. No one looked up from their screens. No one, that is, except Sarah. By the main entrance, the lone security guard, Ben, rose from his stool. He unlatched the heavy double doors of the Synergy Tower's reception. 2 sharp cracks, then another, punctuated the sudden silence. Ammunition was a luxury, a victim of the company's ongoing cost-cutting. Sarah watched as Ben efficiently dragged 2 slumped figures through the doors, delivering a final, brutal stomp to each head. A small retinue of the shuffling dead followed him, drawn by the gunshots. One lurched forward on rotting stumps, its legs long gone, propelling itself with gruesome arm strength. Another's jaw hung askew, a gaping maw of decay. They were likely scavengers, drawn by the promise of fresh meat. Ben, unfazed, deposited the remains into the designated, reinforced bin well away from the building. Sarah kept a careful vigil of the grim spectacle, but a familiar shadow falling over her desk signaled Mr. Henderson's return. With a practiced sigh, she lowered her gaze, plunging back into the digital realm of corporate reports. There was a brief, collective gasp of euphoria when the news first broke. The world was ending. No more rent, no more bills, no more soul-crushing work. Dealing with undead monsters seemed a small price to pay for freedom. A far better prospect than the daily grind of underpaid, pointless tasks. But humanity, or at least its corporate overlords, proved more resilient and more ruthless than anyone expected. Within a month, new structures were in place. The transformation of friends and family into mindless shamblers was deemed irrelevant. Landlords still demanded their rent. Utility companies sent stern letters. Debt collection agencies thrived in the new chaos. Work, everyone was told, is paramount. Stakeholder targets, not survival, became the driving force. So, they returned. Security personnel like Ben were employed to keep the shambling horrors away from the financial district, but outside company property, employees were on their own. Protests flared, only to be brutally suppressed by a government leveraging an international state of emergency to silence dissent. Soon, it was business as usual, the apocalypse just another inconvenience to be managed. Sarah was jolted from her reverie. Mr. Henderson was looming over her, a finger anxiously hovering near her screen. "I don't think this accurately reflects our quarterly earnings, Sarah," he stated, a note of displeasure in his voice. "Can you start from scratch?" Ping. Another email landed. Dr. Eva Stone, to her eternal credit, was remarkably patient. It was her free day, and yet Clara had telephoned, demanding an immediate session. She'd offered Dr. Stone $5,000 for an hour, twice her usual fee. Clara sat in the reception area, trembling. The overhead lights seemed too intense, burning into her eyes, and the room's decor was slowly driving her to distraction. Green walls, green upholstery, green planters everywhere. Even the floor tiles were green. Green, green, green. So green. Why was it green? Was it meant to seep into her thoughts? Clara's fingernails were bitten down to painful quicks. Where could she put her hands? In her pockets. It felt too warm. Then, a moment later, it was too cold. Ben, her husband, sent reassuring texts every few minutes, a lifeline. She scrolled through them, her hands shaking, her stomach churning. "You're all right, Clara. It's okay, my love. I'm here. If it's too much, just leave." When Dr. Stone finally called her name, Clara practically lunged into her private office. "Clara." Dr. Stone offered a tight, weary smile. Clara noticed her blouse was askew, strands of her typically neat bun escaping around tired eyes. She leaned forward, hands clasped, a faint coffee stain on her sleeve, a hair tie mark on her wrist. "What brings you here today?" "I can hear it again," Clara choked out, the words raw. "I hear it everywhere. In the living room, when I'm trying to relax, and the kitchen. It simply won't stop." She hadn't realized she was pulling at her hair until strands were caught between her fingers. "I'm losing my mind," Clara whispered. "I'm going absolutely insane." "A child," Dr. Stone stated softly. "You're hearing a child, Clara. I'm hearing a K-child." Dr. Stone gave a slight nod. "Very well, K-child. Can you think of any particular reason you might be hearing a child, Clara?" Clara shook her head, breathless, her stomach lurching at the mere mention of the word. "Baby. No," she whispered, poised on the edge of her seat. She felt herself fragmenting once more. "Can you make it cease?" Clara hissed. "I'll take any medicine, even the ones that make me ill. I'll take anything." Dr. Stone's patient smile faltered. "Clara, we have discussed this before," she said, her voice even. "You experienced the loss of a child, correct?" "I terminated a pregnancy early on," Clara corrected, her jaw tight. Dr. Stone was an excellent therapist, but sometimes her own convictions bled through her expressions, her gestures, even her carefully chosen reassurances. "Because it would have killed me. My health wasn't strong enough to carry a baby." "Oh, naturally." Dr. Stone nodded, her lips thinning. Her tone was sugary, yet Clara detected a bitter undertone. "I assume you consulted your husband, didn't you? Was he content with your decision, Clara?" A bitter taste rose in Clara's mouth. "Yes," she whispered, her chest tightening with an ache. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Painful. Health anxiety had stolen her peace. Heart palpitations signaled a heart attack. Already, her fingers instinctively sought her throat, feeling for her pulse. "Yes, Ben has always respected my choices," she affirmed. "You're doing it again," Dr. Stone immediately pointed out, and Clara's hands fell to her lap. "Clara, what you perceive is simply your body and subconscious attempting to tell you that you and Ben didn't make a mistake. But let's call it what it truly is, as we are all adults here." Dr. Stone held her unwavering gaze. "You made an ill-informed choice driven by fear. You're in a new city, 25 years old, which is an ideal age for childbirth, regardless of what you claim about your health." "No," Clara interrupted. "Stop talking. You are not permitted to say that." "Clara, you know I'm only trying to assist you." Clara snatched her handbag, hot tears streaming down her face. "I'm leaving." A flicker of something twisted in Dr. Stone's expression. "Tell me again, Clara," Dr. Stone pressed. "Did your husband respect your decision or not?" Clara fumbled with the buttons of her jacket, her fingers clumsy. "He did." "And did he communicate that to you?" Dr. Stone demanded. "Did he state he was happy?" Instead of replying, Clara left the office and walked directly into her husband's waiting arms, letting herself completely unravel. Ben felt warm. Safe. She buried her face in his jacket and allowed herself to break. "I warned you she'd be a charlatan," he murmured into her shoulder. Ben gently pulled back, displaying his usual optimistic smile, with his freckled cheeks and warm brown eyes. It was like gazing into a comforting cup of cocoa. He carefully wrapped his scarf around her neck. "Let's go home." That night, though, she heard it once more. Clara awoke, drenched in sweat, her unfocused gaze fixed on the ceiling, crying. This time, it was louder, shriller, relentless. She slammed her hands over her ears. Ben was asleep beside her. Clara shook him. He mumbled into his pillows. "Are you okay?" "I can hear it," Clara cried, scrambling out of bed. She felt dizzy, gasping for air, letting her legs carry her. The crying seeped from every wall. Clara took a deep, shaky breath and began to rip down their wallpaper. Blue. Just like Ben preferred it. She tore a long strip, watching it peel away from the wall. The crying intensified. Swallowing ragged breaths, she stumbled closer, pressing her hands against the surface. She tore further, frenzied, stripping more wallpaper, until her hands discovered something taped behind the wall, Ben's old mobile phone, now playing Infant Whale Dobbin P4 loop. Somehow, she continued, even with the phone clutched in her hand, because the screams didn't fucking stop. Clara tore at the wallpaper until her nails were sore, her fingers raw, until she found another phone, now playing Infant Whale, now playing. Infant Whale burst from her lungs. She stormed into the bathroom. Hidden behind their medicine cabinet, another phone, now playing Infant Whale MP4 loop. She wasn't insane, her fucking husband was. On New Year's Eve, Sarah, feeling particularly forlorn and a little too much wine in, stumbled upon a Stark website called the Renewal Pact. It promised to guide her toward her true potential. She scoffed, yet something compelled her to click. Agree on the digital contract and type out 5 earnest hopes for the coming year. 1. Stop biting my nails. 2. Get a smile that makes people look. 3. Lose 15 kilograms fast. 4. Have an open heart. 5. Eradicate the old failed Sarah. She woke up on January 1st, screaming. Her fingernails weren't just short, they were gone. Where the nails should have been, there was only smooth, continuous skin. She couldn't bite what didn't exist. On January 2nd, she fell out of bed. Her left leg ended abruptly at the thigh. A massive chunk of her right calf was missing, as if scooped out by an ice cream spoon. She dragged herself to the scale. She was exactly 15 kilograms lighter. It wasn't a diet, it was subtraction. On January 3rd, she awoke with her mouth locked in agony. Her lips had retracted and fused near her jawline, exposing massive, new, porcelain-white teeth that were too big for her skull. She couldn't close her mouth. She had a permanent, predatory grin. On January 4th, her sternum cracked open with a wet snap. Her ribs peeled back like a bloomed flower, exposing her beating heart to the cold air of her study. She had to wrap her torso in kitchen plastic wrap just to keep the dust out. A literal open heart. On January 5th, the front door of her quaint cottage opened. A man walked in. He was handsome, fit, with a charming smile and manicured nails. He was the embodiment. He looked down at her, a bleeding, one-legged, skin-wrapped monster huddled on the floor with pity. "Item 5, he said, using her voice but without the tremor. "Eradicate the old Sarah." He didn't use a weapon. He pulled a heavy-duty trash bag from his pocket. She was too weak to fight back as he suffocated her. She woke up this morning feeling fantastic. 70 kgs, ripped muscles, perfect teeth. She had a dinner engagement tonight. She went to the kitchen to make her herbal tea and noticed a smell coming from under the sink, like meat starting to rot. She opened the cabinet. Deep in the back, behind the cleaning supplies, there was a large, heavy black trash bag wrapped in duct tape. She stared at it for a second. She felt a phantom pain in her chest, but she pushed it away. The old Sarah had been paranoid. She was not. Besides, today was trash pickup day. She'd take the bag out on her way to the gym. Mark sat at the polished oak table in Eleanor's quaint cottage living room, the quiet hum of the afternoon only broken by the occasional chirp of a bird. Her phone rang, startling him slightly. "Could you fetch that for me, dear?" Eleanor called from the adjacent kitchen, her voice light and cheerful. Mark reached for the device. "It's Sarah," he announced, reading the screen. "She says she hasn't found anything she likes and will have to keep looking." A sigh floated from the kitchen. My Sarah never did have much luck with clothes shopping. Far too particular, always indecisive. "Fancy a cup of tea, Mark? I imagine she's going to be a while longer." He groaned, settling deeper into the comfortable armchair. "Yes, please, Eleanor. I think I'll need to maintain my strength." Eleanor soon appeared with 2 steaming mugs and a plate piled high with golden brown muffins. "Are these your famous orange and cranberry ones?" he asked, already reaching for one. She smiled. "The very same." He devoured a few as they chatted. Eleanor spoke of her upcoming trip with friends and her busy schedule of activities. Mark reflected on his recent city break with Sarah and their exciting plans for the next one. After finishing their tea, Eleanor began clearing the table while Mark carried the empty muffin plate to the kitchen. As he dried the last plate, a sudden dry cough rattled in his chest. "Oh dear, did I make those muffins too crumbly again?" Eleanor asked, her voice tinged with mock concern as she handed him a glass of water. He gulped it down, clearing his throat, and returned to the drying. A moment later, another cough erupted, more forceful this time. His throat felt suddenly parched, tight, an inexplicable itch blooming deep within. He set the plate down with a clatter, grabbing another glass of water. But before he could drink, a violent fit of coughing seized him, shaking his entire frame. The glass slipped from his numb fingers, crashing to the tiled floor. Panic surged through him as he fought for breath, the air seemingly trapped in his lungs. He stumbled, falling to his knees, his hands clawing desperately at his throat as if to tear away an invisible obstruction. His vision blurred, the room spinning, and then the world went dark as he collapsed, a crushing weight settling upon his chest. Through the haze, he vaguely registered Eleanor kneeling beside him. Her touch was not gentle, as she calmly adjusted his collar. I truly believed she'd found the one this time. Her voice was an icy whisper, devoid of any warmth. "You two were so good together, but that last trip, it was simply too much for my Sarah." She paused, her gaze chillingly direct. "Only the best for my little girl." Eleanor rose, her movements deliberate, and pulled a heavy black canvas bag from beneath the sink. "She's going to be absolutely heartbroken this time," she mused aloud, her tone disturbingly matter-of-fact. "It took her months to recover last time." With surprising strength, she rolled Mark's inert form onto the canvas, then began to drag the heavy bundle across the kitchen floor, through the living room, and out towards the back door. The cold evening air bit at his face as he was hauled across the overgrown garden towards a dilapidated woodshed. "At least you'll have some company for a while," Eleanor muttered, her voice now a low growl. With a grunt, she pulled open the rusted, heavy metal door of an old stone well concealed within the shed's floor. From the dark depths below, Mark could faintly discern the chilling sounds of movement, things rustling and scuttling in the blackness.